Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Your Mortgage Process. Of course, I am your host, Greg Wareham. So, those of you that have been following the show over the course of time know that we're based out of the New Jersey Shore area. And we've had multiple guests discussing places like Asbury Park and Point Pleasant, Seaside Heights, Long Beach Island. The shore is an iconic and beautiful part of our country. It's one of the greatest parts of our country. But today we're going to stay with our beach theme, but we're going to focus on another iconic part of our country, the Hamptons. Ooh, the Hamptons. So when I think of the Hamptons, I picture the scene in Wall Street. And I was having this conversation with our guest last week. I picture Gordon Gekko on the beach with this 10-pound cell phone, talking to Bud Fox, telling him how his ship just came in. And I remember when I was a kid watching that, you got this, it's kind of a little foggy, isolated. I'm like, wow, this place is absolutely spectacular. And this must be where all the rich people live. And, and as everyone knows, the Hamptons are a seaside area, home to some of the highest profile people in the country, some of the most expensive real estate. And it's not just one spot. It stretches well over 50 miles in Long Island. Now, being a native of New England, I'm not overly familiar with the shorelines of the Hamptons. I'm really familiar with Cape Cod, and now I'm familiar with New Jersey after being here for 20 years. And the Hamptons always have been a very mysterious and elegant place to me. And we're fortunate today to have a guest, Steve Rosmarin with Douglas Elliman Real Estate. Steve, how are you today?
I am well, thank you.
Well, Stephen, to give him the proper introduction, is the #1 real estate agent on the Hamptons for Douglas Elliman. And thank you for taking the time today, Steve.
No, my pleasure.
So please tell us about yourself.
Well, my experience in the Hamptons is moving out there actually after 9/11.
Okay.
I was in the travel industry. I was a retail travel agent. And always very customer oriented.
Sure.
And the travel industry got wrecked after 9/11. And you had to reinvent yourself. And I had a friend out in the Hamptons, and she said real estate, and I haven't looked back. So it's amazing. Well, it's just amazing how the industry dominates the area, the East End of Long Island. So it is the biggest industry, whether it's the construction of houses and selling of houses. And
No, I can imagine. And the price, what's the price of an average home in the Hamptons? I know it's different from place to place.
It's very different from place to place. You can't really generalize. You can, although the bottom number has certainly increased in the last few years.
Sure.
But I could tell you that things top out in the 70-80 million dollar range, but
Pocket change.
yeah, well, and that's certain streets in Southampton on the ocean. Meadow Lane is the famous street.
Sure.
But you can play in the Hamptons. You can get into our area. For $1 million,
Okay.
even a little less if you buy something modest. Things get less expensive the further you get from the water.
Sure.
And we have a very different real estate environment than you have at the Jersey Shore. My growing up in New Jersey, which
Sure.
I did.
You're from Edison.
I'm from
originally,
Edison
right?
originally, and which is
Welcome back.
kind of funny only because I lived, maybe 10 miles from a Monmouth County beach, and I don't think I ever went to the beach until I got my driver's license at 17 years old. So my parents were not beach people.
Right.
And my memory is of Seaside Heights and those kind of places where houses are just on top of each other,
Sure.
little cottages, jam packed. And I think the most significant difference that we have, and what makes us unique, is that we have big lot zoning. So there are whole towns almost where you have to have basically we call it R40 zoning, 40,000 square foot lots, which are an acre, what we call a builder's acre.
Okay.
And so you can't get that kind of really close construction.
And that's the minimum. You have to have a minimum of a
Well,
1 acre
in certain
lot.
areas,
Okay.
I mean, there's certain places that are R20, which would be half an acre zoning. And actually, when you get out, and my little section of ocean that I sell a lot of is in the west. I mean, I'm centered on Main Street, West Hampton Beach,
Okay.
and we have a thing called Dune Road, which basically stretches from Hampton Bays, the Shinnecock Inlet in the east, to Cupsog Beach, which is the Mauritius Inlet in the west. And,
Okay.
and it's about, I'd say, a 9-10 mile strip of land, Barrier Island. Kind of like Fire Island. A lot of people are familiar with
Sure.
Fire Island. So this is, if you go across the Mauritius Inlet, you're on Dune Road.
Okay.
And so this is this one road that just goes the whole length of this thing, and it is where they haven't preserved the land, it is all constructed. And there are sections of there where you can own, a 2-acre, 3-acre lot on the ocean, which is going to set you back a different price than having a 50-foot wide lot on the ocean with, a neighbor who also has a 50-foot wide yacht.
Sure.
And some people joke about it being, it's like townhomes in Queens, or what are they, like just lined up squares. But
Sure.
you have your own 50-foot piece of the Atlantic Ocean.
And I know when we were preparing for the show and talking about everything, you were talking about different hamlets and villages, terms that we just don't see in most of the country, if any of the country. And it really seems to be unique to the Hamptons.
So my little piece of the world,
Yeah.
and I focus on my business in the Hamptons, but my little piece in the world is in the town of Southampton, which I believe is geographically the largest town on Long Island.
Okay.
It stretches from a little hamlet called Eastport in the west to the very tony hamlet of Sagaponack in the east.
Okay.
And basically, if you go east of there, you're in East Hampton,
Mm-hmm.
of which, people are pretty familiar with Montauk being the very tip of East Hampton.
Sure.
So that is the entire southern. I see you have a
I
map.
got a map. I need a map for this, Steve.
Right. There you go. So basically, what we call the South Fork.
Okay.
And so, we've got the North Fork where the wineries are there, and
Okay.
we've got the South Fork.
Now, when most people are going to vacation or looking for a vacation home, they're usually looking at the South Fork. The South Fork.
Right. And so, so basically Southampton Town, which is the more western, obviously, than East Hampton, or a little closer to the city, Manhattan,
Okay.
or New York. It's made up of and you were alluding to it. It's made up of hamlets and villages.
Okay.
So basically, and this is just political geographical designations,
Jargon for it.
right? But
Well, I'm thinking, what's a hamlet?
okay, so basically,
it's a
we've got
Shakespeare
we've
thing.
got
I know that.
That's right. There are basically two different government structures. So
Okay.
Southampton Town is made up of 5 villages, which is the village of West Hampton Dunes, which is the western end of Dune Road.
Okay.
West Hampton Beach, which is my little part of the world. The village of Quogue, which is just to the east of West Hampton Beach, and then Sag Harbor and the village of Southampton.
Okay.
They have their own governments. They have their own police departments, their own beaches, their own, private to their residents.
Okay.
Everything else is just simply Southampton.
Okay.
And so Southampton has its own beaches, a little less exclusive than maybe the village beaches.
Mhm.
So the village of Quogue, of which I have a home in the village of Quogue, the only people who can go to the Quogue Village Beach are residents or tenants of residents of Quogue.
Okay.
And West Hampton Beach, which is probably the other significant village in our area, they have 2 beaches, and the only people who can go there are people from West Hampton Beach, the hamlet of you can also buy into those village beaches. So it's a little less exclusive than Quogue, but you can buy in from West Hampton, Remsenburg, and
Now, do you
and
still have to
Quiet.
live there to even buy into it?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so and actually and Southampton Town, which is a little less exclusive because anybody who's in the entire town of Southampton can go to a Southampton Town beach.
Okay.
And not to be confusing, but all the beaches on Dune Road east of Quogue are basically Southampton Town beaches, and anybody who has residence in Southampton
Okay.
can do that.
So if someone's coming to visit for the day,
Yep.
can they go to a beach in the area? Are there public beaches?
There is, yes.
There's
so
one.
at the very so at the and so and when I say these, the exclusivity of some of the village beaches, say,
Sure.
the other end of the spectrum is the lack of exclusivity that anybody can go to Cupsog Beach, which is the westernmost piece of Dune Road, which is a Suffolk County beach. So-
Okay.
and you can pay by the day or whatever.
Okay, understood. Now, but all the beaches are really located on the south part versus the
Well, okay, so there are Atlantic beaches.
Yeah.
And there really is almost no difference except for, again, the access, the exclusivity of it. It's all the same beach, that whole strip of 10, 12 miles.
okay.
But in Southampton also, if you go to the northern side, or the top of the South Fork,
Okay.
is Peconic Bay.
Okay.
And there are beautiful bay beaches there also, but it's not, you don't have the top, the waves, you don't have surfing or any of
Sure.
that. But it's a bay. It's a little bit warmer water, which a lot of people like.
Mm-hmm.
And
Probably good for kids. I
it's
would
great
imagine.
for
Yeah.
there's a beach called Meshoot in Hampton Bays that's very, very popular with families. And yeah, I mean, there are days when you would not take a small child out onto an ocean beach.
Okay.
The waves are coming in, and
Sure.
your child is.
So can you drive around and look? So if me and my wife go look in Montauk and drive around, am I going to get arrested at looking at $70 million houses?
No, anybody can look, but the ones under $70 million usually have big gates
You can't see 'em,
in front
right?
of them. We have a thing that I don't know if the rest of the country has, but there are. They call them privet,
Okay.
and privet is basically huge hedges in front of these mansions or those big homes.
Now, I've always gotten the feeling that on the Hamptons, it's almost a different weather pattern at times.
It is. So first of all, we're usually 10 degrees cooler than the city,
Mhm.
and so and when you live out there, it's just you're used to the weather. But boy, when I go into the city in the summer and I go, how do these people live in this 93 degree, weather when it's, 80 by us or so, or, and it's pretty pleasant.
Sure.
It's a perfect day.
Right.
And I think that's, part of the popularity. That is part of the popularity of owning a house out there. It's,
So I'm gonna come back to go a little more detail on. I wanted to ask you another question. A lot of people listening out there are professionals. They're like-minded professionals in the real estate industry, mortgage industry. How did you become the number one agent in the Hamptons for
well,
Douglas
first
Elliman?
you're throwing that around, but I was the number one agent in 2018.
close
I'm
enough.
still up there, but
How do you establish
So,
such a
well,
robust
first of all,
business?
actually,
Yeah.
yeah. So take it back to my beginning, and I said in the beginning, I came from the travel business, and so I've always been a customer service oriented, pleasing person who made my living off of serving people and giving them knowledge,
Sure.
and that's what travel agents do. And it translates really well into real estate. And, our business is a very funny business. It's made up of people who do it, sort of on the side or part-time,
Sure.
or people who really do it for a living. And when I first got into the business, like I said, my business had shuttered up. And so I needed to make money immediately. So it was sort of, guerrilla marketing and guerrilla selling, basically. And I think, well, so, and in my first year in the business, which was 2003, I was the rookie of the year from Manhattan to Montauk for Douglas Elliman was originally Prudential Long Island Real Estate.
Sure,
And
yeah.
we
Yeah, I
we
remember.
bought Douglas Elliman, I think in 2005 or
Okay.
something like that. So I was the rookie of the year from Manhattan to Montauk for Douglas Elliman, and you could have knocked me over because I didn't know what I was doing except trying to earn a living.
Sure.
And
How do you
and
go to 0 to 100? I mean, do you pick up the phone and start cold calling people? Like, what did you do?
yeah,
Okay.
that's 90% of the business is telephone work.
Sure.
And so, yeah, you literally actually I could tell you exactly how. So there are two aspects of my job.
Yeah.
One is selling houses.
Mm-hmm.
Or helping people buy houses, and the other is rentals.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody in the Hamptons kind of starts out in the rental thing. You know,
Sure.
it's sort of the more accessible thing. It's a little less intimidating than walking up to somebody who's got an $8 million house and saying, I can sell that better than anybody or whatever. So what you do, literally, I mean, we had these databases of homeowners, and you would update their rental listing for the next year, and then you'd attach your name to it.
Mm-hmm.
People would call, you know, it would be in our databases, and people would call off them, and you'd do rentals. And renters become buyers, we
Sure.
always say, and landlords become sellers.
Right.
So the two things are completely enmeshed.
Mhm.
And you know, a lot of people, when they hit great success in our business, and you know, I know quite a few of them, they kind of go, oh, I don't do rentals anymore. And the gist of the business is doing rentals. You
Right.
know, I mean, we're a vacation area.
Sure.
And so you're crazy not to do it if you want to continue your business.
Sure. Makes sense. And that's all in the follow-up after that.
Right. And
Doing
so,
rents.
and literally that was it. I could also go back to, you know, real estate 101. I would call up people and that they really weren't. We had things called open listings and exclusive listings. One is you're the exclusive seller of that house. Open ones are more what people are used to when they see like a for sale by owner kind of thing.
Got it.
And you walk up to a for sale by owner guy and go, hey, can I do an open house in your house for 3 hours on Saturday? And sometimes they say yes. And so you do. And that's how you guerrilla sell, you know? And
Yeah, no, makes perfect sense.
so,
Where do most of your clients come from? Is it Manhattan, New England, Northern New Jersey?
you know, it's interesting. I'm always surprised by the amount of people that we get from New Jersey. And again, I'm a Jersey guy. So, you know, the first thing when I see a Jersey plate, you always say, oh, what exit? And, you know, it's part of me. As I say, you could take the boy out of Jersey, but you can't take Jersey out of the boy.
I think we even did that when you were coming here. I'm actually at 117, 114.
Exactly. And so we get a tremendous amount of business from northern Jersey, you know,
Okay.
from Bergen County area, Tenafly. I have a lot of friends who I've made friends with in the real estate business, clients from North Jersey, and our connection is kind of Jersey. But
Yeah.
but you know, for the most part, a lot of people from the city. You know, originally it was mostly Manhattan, but now, you know, a lot of people in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And Brooklyn, you know, has its own distinct clientele also, which
Sure.
tend to be a little younger, I think, than the people in Manhattan. And then, surprisingly enough, we get a lot of Connecticut people.
Okay.
We have 2 ferries that come to Long Island from either Bridgeport,
Mhm.
Connecticut, or from New London.
Okay.
The Bridgeport one, so people who live in and around the Bridgeport ferry, they come into Port Jefferson on the north shore, the north,
So it's like the people in and around 95, I think, on in
Yeah.
Connecticut. Okay.
and so they can zip over on the ferry, and we're probably a 40-minute ride from the ferry.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so, yeah, so that's kind of the bulk of it, I think. And you know, the other thing that we have, which is just, I don't know that people came from Florida, but we have a lot of people who winter in Florida and summer up here.
Okay.
And so a lot of the people, especially the old timers, you know, who've done well with their real estate up here.
Sure.
And they that's the whole snowbird phenomena.
Right.
And there's actually a little triangle that I like to draw out of people. They have a place in Florida, they have a place in the Hamptons, they have a place in Manhattan.
You got everything you need.
There you go.
So you had mentioned the boats coming from Connecticut. Now, can you also take a boat to and from the Jersey Shore, from Cape Cod?
I wish you could, but
Okay.
no, those are the two ports. And so they both come into the north also. So we mentioned before the two forks of the East End. And so the North Fork is known for and has really become a major winemaking vineyard area.
Okay.
And so a lot of people who live on the South Shore where I live go, and on a weekend day, you'll go up on a Sunday and you'll go do a little winery tour. It's like going to Napa Valley in California. So I'm not sure the quality of wine is the same, but it's a lot of fun.
That's great. So you can do anything. So you can do the vineyards. Depends. Do you go
And
to the north?
actually, where I live, so let me talk about my little area
Please.
of the world. So West Hampton Beach, Quogue, that area, Remsenburg, we are right at the fork of the bottom of the crotch of the two forks.
Sure.
And so from where I live in Quogue, or my office in West Hampton Beach, it's literally a 12-minute ride. You don't have to go around the fork to get to the North Fork. You just go straight up north and you're at the beginning of the North Fork.
Got it.
So I could be at, one of my favorite restaurants up on the North Fork in 15 minutes from my house, which is really just convenient. So it's nice to be able to live at the beach and visit the wineries and the restaurants on the North Fork.
Yeah.
So
that sounds incredible.
the other great thing about where I am, and we were always and what I'm talking about is we divide the Hamptons we divide Southampton Town into east of the canal, which there's a canal that leads from the ocean into Peconic Bay, which is between the two forks.
Okay.
And there's locks that you pass through when you go through that canal. And so the hoity-toity or the more Tony part of the Hamptons was always considered east of the canal.
Okay.
So people who lived in Southampton, the village of Southampton, or Watermill, or Sagaponack, or Bridgehampton, and they sort of poo-pooed the side of Southampton Town west of the canal. And West Hampton Beach in particular has remade their village, and they ripped up Main Street. It's almost Disney-esque in its appearance now.
Okay.
It's clean and neat and new restaurants and all of that. And now people who come from, we have a big influx of people coming from east of the canal buying west of the canal now. And so, they they've always been a little bit pricier to the east.
Sure.
And so those people cash that property in and buy,
And they're coming over.
and they come over.
So just for really quick from a traffic standpoint, how do you beat it? We need an inside track for traffic.
And actually that is probably one of the strongest assets of our area.
Okay.
So to get to the Hamptons, one takes either the Sunrise Highway or the Long Island Expressway.
Okay.
And you get off at a town called Manorville and you take a road called 111, and that takes you basically to Remsenburg, which is my area, which is it's the western end of West Hampton Beach. So unless there's an accident or something on the LA, there's no traffic really there.
Okay.
And
People take notes on this one. This is important.
definitely take notes on this. So because the beauty of that area is that you don't have to plan your weekend around traffic patterns. That there is no traffic pattern.
Sure.
But when you go there is a definite clog that happens east of our area in the Hampton Bays. So when you come down the LIE, you come down 111, you get onto 27, 27 East. And when you take 27 East to go to those further east locales, hamlets and villages, there is a definite clog that happens when 27 becomes County Road 39, and that becomes Montauk Highway, a 2-lane highway. And so there is legendary summer traffic, especially, on a Friday afternoon on Montauk Highway trying to get to your house in Bridgehampton. And it could actually take, a couple of hours to go from West Hampton Beach out to Bridgehampton or so.
So you got to leave on Thursday.
And so that's that's literally what people do is they have to change their travel plans. And the other, the other bad part of the traffic is that on Sunday, and this is for people who are doing their weekends out here, but on Sunday, a lot of people just go, you know what, let's get out of here at 11 o'clock. So you lose a whole day of your weekend because of the traffic.
Have you found there's more people there since our worlds went remote in the past few years?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the answer is yes, and it's reflected itself in property values going up.
Okay.
I mean, the demand to be in our area. And the pandemic had a lot of effects on us out there. People wanted to come out to us because we still have close proximity. We're an hour and 20 minutes away from Manhattan. But you can be out in a village environment, a country environment, and not feel like you're on top of other people and all of that. And, we probably had a pretty easy pandemic, I think, compared to, most of the country.
Now, do you find since the pandemic that a lot of people move there permanently?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
actually, there are statistics about increases in school population, things like that. So people just said, forget it. I'm giving up on the city and coming out.
I mean, why not? Right? You work remotely. Why not be there?
Well, and that even the whole remote working thing adds even more to it.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's all been this sort of snowballing effect of, just people want to be where we are. So,
now, do you see the market changing anytime soon in that area?
It's funny. We're in a funny market right now. We're recording this on August 15th, is it?
17.
17. Sorry, I live in the Hamptons. There's no date.
You're on Hampton time.
I'm on Hampton time. We had the mortgage rate increase about a month ago now, I guess.
Yeah.
And
3-4 months ago already.
Is it really that?
Yeah.
Well, there was that big 3/4 point pop.
Yeah.
And which I'm sure
I know it all too well.
And we've had very tight inventory in the Hamptons in general for the last couple of years since the pandemic.
Okay.
And so nobody wants to give up their house, and
can see that
people want to be there, and so inventory has been really, really low for the last couple of years. We have an interesting phenomena in our area. I describe real estate sales as being a perfect storm by us.
Okay.
Nobody really has to sell, and nobody really has to buy. It's a discretionary, we're mostly a second home area. Nobody's moving to us because they've been relocated by their company out to the Hamptons or anything like that.
Too bad,
you should
right?
be so lucky, right? Exactly. And so everything has to come together. You have to find a seller who, they're ready to cash it in. They're done. They've aged out. Their kids have gotten, they don't come anymore or whatever. And so you have to find that perfect seller with a buyer who, maybe it'd be nice to have a place in the Hamptons, but they don't have to have
That
a
is
place
a great
in the
point. It is really unique to your marketplace.
Right. So we have literally, I mean, almost zero relo,
Right.
and it's almost all just discretionary buying and selling.
Just the want factor.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great.
And it has to fit in with somebody's lifestyle. There are people who vacation, is a week down in Orlando or
Yeah.
whatever, and that's not who's buying in our area.
Sure.
For the most part, and I don't like to make broad brush strokes, but it's kind of a professional class out there, who are our typical buyers of second homes. They're probably the same ones anywhere.
Sure.
They're we have the Wall Street type. We have people in insurance. We have lawyers. We have doctors. It's and that crowd of people, they like to take a long vacation. They like, or to be able to have access to something all summer long or so when things are less crazy, frenzied in the
Makes
city.
sense.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, Steve, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come right back at you. Steve Rosmarin, Greg Wareham will be back in 2 seconds. Welcome back, everyone. Again, this is Your Mortgage Process. I'm your host, Greg Wareham, and we have Steve Rosmarin today from Douglas Elliman Realty. Steve, has the Hamptons always been a prized location to be?
Well, it all kind of started out, and without going through the whole history of Long Island or anything, there was always a demand by wealthy New Yorkers, people in the city, to get out to the country, especially to summer in their summer homes.
Sure.
And so Quogue and West Hampton Beach Village are both very there's a lot of history there.
Okay.
And people didn't do the same things on vacations that we do today. But it was more about the fresh air and lack of people, and people wanted to get away for the summer, and activities were more like fishing, and we have the West Hampton Country Club, which I think
sounds exclusive.
It's pretty it's pretty exclusive. There's actually a lot of golf in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And that started, I think, in the 30s or so, 30s, 40s, something like that. I'm not a golfer, so.
Me either. I don't have the patience.
Oh, my God. Well,
I don't have the build either. I'm built for power.
There you go. You're
No finesse.
baseball player. No, but and there's always been sort of a private clubbiness to, we have basically 4 private beach clubs that some families have been in for generations now, on the ocean or the country club.
How are the waiting lists to get into those?
It's pretty tough.
Right.
And that's why it's also nice if you're not part of that whole scene, and that it is a scene.
Sure.
Then you still have the Quogue Village Beach or Rogers Beach in West Hampton.
Do you still have a lot of people that go there for the fishing?
Yeah, there's a big boating contingent in the area also. Okay. We have plenty of marinas on the bay side. So if you zoomed in on your map a little bit, we have this major body of water called Mauritius Bay, and there is an inlet that goes out to the ocean from there.
Okay.
And we've got a number of marinas in the area that do that, or you can actually take sort of an inland path through the Quogue Canal into Shinnecock Bay, which again brings you back into those locks that I was telling you about before at the canal, and to go into Peconic Bay. And so most of the fishing nowadays takes place, I think, on people's boats. Although you'll always see guys, standing on bridges with fishing poles around. I mean, just
What other type of amenities are there? Fishing. We have the
the we are a very athletic. Again, we're a vacation area, so people do what they do on vacation. So besides the obviously the beaches and the golf. I mean, we probably have, I don't know, 10 golf courses in Southampton Town.
Wow.
And some of the most exclusive ones in the country, actually. In when you get, again, on the eastern end of Southampton, there are 3 very famous golf courses that they play the U.S. Open on every once in a while.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's a big thing. They play Shinnecock, and it's a famous golf course.
That must be where I know the name from then, because I have heard the name before.
You know, golfing is big. We have a lot of tennis. You know, people are very active in our area. Bicycling. I like to run and bike, and one of the nice assets of our area is everything's pretty flat. You know, I guess that's also pretty good for the golfers.
That's great. I like downhill both ways, but
exactly.
I'll take flat.
Yes. So you know, I like. It's actually a beautiful area to bicycle in. So.
You know, so you had mentioned before about rental properties out there, and I was wondering, is there an impact with Airbnb?
I'm not sure. Well, first of all, there is a legal issue with Airbnb.
Okay.
Which I believe Southampton Town's minimum tenancy is 2 weeks.
Okay.
So, does Airbnb exist? Absolutely. Does the town of Southampton, you know, Big Brother, watch the websites and look for people who might be getting carried away with that stuff?
Yeah.
You know, what they're trying to do is protect people who might be living next door from having, you know, random people coming and going for short stays through the season.
So all right. So they've done a very similar thing in on the shore, New Jersey shore, which is sometimes you got to rent it for a month. It depends on the town, and they control it all at the town level. It sounds like the same thing in the Hamptons.
It is, yeah. So when somebody rents, you actually have to, if you rent your house out, you have to get a rental application.
Okay.
You submit it to the town, and they may or may not send an inspector to the house to make sure that things are safe.
Sure.
You know, it's a source of revenue for the town also. But you know, look, nobody wants to be living next door to, you know, a flop house, I guess,
right, a daily rental
or a daily,
couple days.
right.
Because people go hard on those.
People do go hard.
They go hard.
Right, and
I mean, I'm never invited to anybody's party, but I hear they go hard.
Yes. And when you do rent your house out, and again, this is a big industry in our area, you know, you as a landlord, you can put into the lease, and we literally have leases on these things that get submitted to the town also. And you know, you could put in, they must have weekly house cleanings and lawn cutting, and that's all paid by the tenant.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And is that standard on them?
Totally standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So someone's there cutting the grass on a Wednesday, and I'm there for the week.
Yeah,
I'm paying for that.
And you're
it's built
again
in.
not on a weekly, but on a monthly.
On a monthly, got it.
You know, and landlords are free to do whatever they want. They can include that stuff, but most of them, most people understand that it's done on sort of a net basis. So you rent a house. If you want to know, like a typical rental, basically the average rental, I would say, in the West Hampton Beach Quag area, for the month of July, our season goes Memorial Day to Labor Day, and some people rent for the entire time. More often than not, they'll rent for a month, so they'll rent either for July or August. And, you know, people will pay, you know, 25, 30, 40,000 to, there are rentals that are, you know, $1 million nowadays.
Not a lot of weekly rentals, though.
But no, again,
because they get that 2 weeks.
2 week minimum, and you know, again, does it happen? Yes, but but if you do it too much and your neighbors report you, you won't be doing it anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The town will come after you.
What's the best time of year to visit?
Well, obviously the season again goes Memorial Day to Labor Day, and that's when the weather is really perfect. we who live there year round will always say the best time of year is September and October when everybody goes home.
Same here.
When all the tourists go home.
Well, the weather's still great.
And the weather is still great. I mean, I think the water temperature is almost as important as the air temperature.
Yeah.
And so, in I don't really get in the ocean until July 1st.
Okay.
And, and even that, I have like a wetsuit top on, that kind of thing. But then in August, it's pretty nice. In September, it's still warm. So,
Now, are there activities in the off season?
well, again, I'm being someone who lives there year round. So again, West Hampton Beach has gone through a little bit of a renaissance in the last couple of years. So, there is, and since the pandemic and since more people have moved out there on a year-round basis, you'll see more restaurants open year-round. There used to be a lot of seasonal restaurants.
Right.
They'd pop up in May and they'd be closing down in September, October, something like that. Now you're starting to see more restaurants that just remain open the year. And actually, it's another interesting phenomenon. When somebody sinks a couple of $1 million into their house,
Right.
They want to use that house more. So even if it's still a second home to them, you will see them out here. And they used to, people used to just shut the house down when they were done in September, say, and then they'd open it back up in May. And literally, when I say shut down, I mean drain the water out of the pipes, close it up. Now you're starting to see people keep the house open throughout the winter. Holidays.
I always had a vision of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
the
It's
Hamptons.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Dune Road can be on the ocean, could be a little bit desolate in, January and February and early March. And it literally, you could probably count on two hands the amount of people who are living there year round. Yeah, more and more people come out for the holidays, and that's a nice thing.
That's great.
Yeah,
It's great for the community.
and anything that can keep the stores open longer. And again, I'll tell you, being so close to the North Fork vineyards, those things are pretty much open all winter long.
Okay.
So
Sounds like a great fall trip.
yeah. Oh my God.
Right?
So the North Fork is. Again, you talk about traffic problems, but there's basically two parallel roads that take you from east to west on the North Fork. And one of the local horrors is, we call them pumpkin pickers or whatever, but they're like leaf peepers in New England, I guess.
Right.
But the traffic is just at a standstill on these two roads of people going out to these pumpkin farms and buying apple pies and pumpkin and all of that.
Well, you can't get them by home, Steve.
Right. And drinking wine at the same time.
Right. And yelling at the kids.
Yeah, exactly.
So speaking of food, what food are the Hamptons known for?
Seafood restaurants, we have a place in Hampton Bays called Oakland's, which is a little fancier one, another one called Summers. There's a lot of seafood to be had, and actually Hampton Bays has a major marina for ocean-going commercial fishermen.
Okay.
So that stuff is coming in fresh. Yeah, as fresh as can be.
That's great. Any other iconic spots that people should check out if you want to name drop?
As far as restaurants?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I mean, again, keeping it local. In West Hampton Beach, we actually just lost the legendary restaurateur in our area was a fellow named Star Boggs, and he unfortunately has passed and sold his restaurant, but it's now called Fauna, and it's part of a restaurant group of 5 restaurants, I think, between Hampton Bays and West Hampton Beach. In West Hampton Beach, they have Flora and Fauna, coincidentally.
Keep it easy.
Yeah, right. We got a nice Italian restaurant called The Patio that's been there forever, and actually a lot of legendary people have been dragged out of the patio back in the day. I think Howard Cosell used to
No kidding.
Used to imbibe a little bit there, and he had a house over. If you remember how Howard?
Oh, of
Rosa
course,
was.
yeah.
And he had a house right on the water.
Nick doesn't remember him, by the
Yeah,
way.
you're a little young for this, Nick.
Sorry, guys.
So that, and then local places, Margarita Grill, Bowie One is a nice. If you like your seafood kind of fried and more family friendly, that kind of thing.
How about great local watering holes that people can go to, have a drink, and look at the ocean?
Well, and actually, the back bar at Fauna or Starbucks is the one. And actually, I almost forgot that. There's a place called Dockers on Dune Road. There are actually 5 restaurants on Dune Road. 2 of them, one is Dockers in East Quogue, and one is John Scott's in West Hampton. John Scott's it's called John Scott's Surf Shack, I think, and it's very, very casual, good seafood, and a great bar.
Now, is the whole area casual? Typical vacation area?
It is all casual.
Okay.
I mean, people. I'm kind of a jeans guy, but if you're not people look at you walking down the street. If you're not wearing shorts, you kind of look funny, and you can pretty much go into any restaurant. But the other restaurant I was going to mention, and the other great bar to hang out at is Dockers in East Quogue, and it's a pretty high-end seafood restaurant with just. Most of these seafood restaurants have spectacular views, and the sunset from the back of Dockers is just...
you got to get there early.
It's breathtaking. Yeah.
It's fantastic. Have you ever sold a house to someone famous?
Yeah, but I won't say.
Well, I know you can't tell me. That's got to be an experience.
Well, and I will tell you, well, first of all, noticing on your wall here, your memorial to Tom Brady.
It's more of a shrine.
A shrine. Yeah, okay.
I know you're a huge fan.
Yeah. So being a New Jersey New Yorker, not my favorite football player, but we actually have. So Mr. Brady comes and visits our area every once in a while, and he stays in a very special private club for people of his net worth.
Yeah.
And actually, Eli Manning just bought and knocked down and built a new place on the ocean. And
well, you have to have a house in the Hamptons.
Yeah, you do.
Right? You're rich and famous. You have to.
Well, and yeah, we our side of the canal, we had a lot of New York newscasters, people like that in our area. But when you get further out east, that's when you're getting into the Howard Sterns or the
Jerry Seinfeld.
Jerry Seinfeld, the zillionaires who own 5-acre, 10-acre compounds on the ocean.
Yeah, and I don't want to minimize costs, but I mean, you can buy a house there for $1 million.
You can buy a house under $1 million if you have a good nose for it
and the right agent.
And the right agent. There is pretty much something for everyone. Not everybody is buying a second home.
Sure.
And we do have a major shortage of workforce housing in our area. Southampton Town is struggling with with workforce housing because all of the old rentals have been bought by everybody during the pandemic.
Right.
So
where's everyone go?
So
that's sad.
Well,
I mean,
it is, and it's also a big problem for the restaurants and hotels who have to staff these places in the summer, and so a lot of restaurants have come to rent houses for the summer for their staffs. So
it makes sense, because if you're coming there as staff, do you really want to sit in traffic for 3 hours to get there? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, and
cost of gas.
The service workers in the restaurants and things, they're there for the summer. They come up for the summer. They'll split houses and things like that. But they're making it a summer vacation for themselves also.
Sure.
And a lot of the local bartenders bartend up here in the Hamptons in the summer, and down in Florida or in the islands, St. John in the winter. It's a pretty nice
I always
life.
wanted to do that. After I saw the movie Cocktail with Tom Cruise, I wanted to be like a traveling bartender, but apparently I don't have the skill set.
Well, and there's a huge demand for service workers in
Yeah, I can
restaurants.
imagine.
A lot of the, and I don't know, I think it's part of what's going on in our economy right now, but this like zero unemployment situation,
Yeah.
you have restaurants that can't reserve all of their tables because they don't have enough staff to handle it.
You can see that it's historic lows right now, 3.6% unemployment. I mean, it's at least people are working.
Everybody's
Yeah.
figuring out how to do it, and you know, I don't think it's a particularly great time to be running a restaurant nowadays
Yeah.
when you're having to pay staff. You know, when you're basically everybody's poaching each other's workers
Sure.
with higher salaries, and
Right.
but you need it. You can't not be staffed.
Right.
So
I had a question for you. I'm looking at my map again.
yes.
So what is Gardner's Island?
So Gardner's Island is a private island.
Really?
It is a private island.
Have you ever been?
It's a private island.
It's
And
that private?
It's that private. It's owned by the Gardner family. It has been owned by the Gardner family from the 1600s.
Wow.
So I believe Gardner's Island might have been the first English settlement in New York State. And, you know, Southampton, I believe, is the first English settlement on Long Island.
Okay.
But I think Gardner's Island actually preceded it. And it has been passed through. I just read a piece about it. It's funny you should mention it because I think the 16th generation or this fellow who's there now, and there's, you know, there's a big mansion there and there are signs that say keep out, and there's a dock there that says keep out, and I
Right.
believe there's a guy with a shotgun who will keep you out.
Dogs?
Dogs. And, but it's actually one of, and actually it is one of the most pristine left places in the country, like where man has not
Wow.
messed with.
I mean,
the
it looks like a
environment.
big island.
It's a big island.
Wow.
You know, we have there's another island also that you can't see on your little map there, but and this has to do with the North Fork. There's an island called Plum Island, and Plum Island is off of Orient on the North Fork, the very eastern end of the North Fork, and they had a famous laboratory there. I think it still operates, where they worked on, they quarantined and isolated animal diseases.
Yeah.
And it's they say that the waters around Plum Island are like the most pristine waters anywhere because
You can't go
nobody
near
goes
it.
there. It's-
I remember Plum Island. There was a scene in Silence of the Lambs. I'm quoting movies all over the place, but that's where they were going to send Hannibal Lecter, was to Plum Island on vacation.
Well, I highly recommend. I highly recommend the book Plum Island. If you really want to learn about the
Interesting.
east end of Long Island, I'm not going to remember his name right now. He's a famous author, but there's a great book and really an intro to the East End.
So at what point, so I've had meet a ton of people that tell me they're from Long Island. Hamptons are part of Long Island. At what point are you in the Hamptons versus Long Island?
So the way I think the way anybody would describe it is Southampton Town and East Hampton Town are the Hamptons,
Okay.
and so everything else
You
is,
keep going east, that's all
everything else
Hamptons.
is somewhere in between New York and the Hamptons. And you know, like I said, I've only been there for 20 years. But, and so, you know, if you ask me to pinpoint, you know, Wyandanch on a map of Long Island, I haven't a clue. I hate to admit it, but you know, and I'm not trying to be a pretentious Hamptonite. I'm just saying it's its own little world
Sure.
on the South Fork there. So
What's the one piece of advice you would give to someone looking to purchase a house in the Hamptons?
first of all, work with a good, knowledgeable local realtor. But do your research, take your time, look at comparable Actually, the first thing you have to do is really decide what your priority is.
Okay.
Do you want to be on the beach? Do you want to be by the beach? Do you want to have more land and, you know, be inland? Do you want to have a tennis court? Do you want to, you know, how many bedrooms do you need?
Right.
These are all questions that you have to ask yourself. And understand, you know, if you're working with a good realtor, they're going to know what the comps are, and they're going
Right.
to know. And I hate to say that I've talked to too many people who um, who didn't buy wisely out there,
Hmm.
and didn't, real estate market has always been an upward arc,
Sure.
uh, except when 2009, which you remember very well,
Sure. Do.
and um, you don't want to be caught having bought something for over market value,
Right.
and that I think like a realtor. So I mean, to me, it's all the asset to the cost of it,
Sure.
and when you break that ratio, then you're not in a good place.
I mean, it seems pretty clear from our time together today. I mean, you really have to work with the right real estate agent in the marketplace. I mean, hamlets, villages. This is where you go to the beach. This isn't where this. I mean, there's like a million different things that you really need to consider.
And if you're talking to somebody who does this full time,
Yeah.
this is our lexicon. This is it rolls off, because you if you don't know these basic pieces of information, you're just guessing,
Right.
and that doesn't help somebody.
Right. So, Steve, I know you're not part of any clubs in that area or any of the country clubs, those communities. How do you network to be as successful as you are if you're not involved with those types of clubs or institutions?
Real estate is a very funny business, and my goal when I sell a house, and it can be a tricky thing, is to have everybody like you at the end of the deal. And it people, if they didn't buy something right or it didn't sell for what was expected, they can have a bad taste in their mouth. You're at the closing table and somebody's grumbly.
Sure.
But in my business, I rely on previous sales and previous customers. I don't get referrals necessarily. I do get some referrals from other agents, but most of my referrals come from my past clients.
Okay.
And when you can build your business around that, if you're always doing, as a realtor, if you're always doing the right thing all the time, people notice it,
Right.
and it results in sales, and sales result in more sales,
Hmm.
and that's how you make your business snowball.
How do you stay in touch with your previous buyers or sellers?
Yeah, well, we all have emails, and I actually operate a over 7,000 person Facebook forum page, the West Hampton Beach Area Community Forum. Let me plug that.
And you get that right on Facebook.
And you go to Facebook and you plug in West Hampton Beach. I think it's the first thing that comes up, and my smiley face. And it's really become a huge resource for the area, whether a restaurant is running a special, somebody has a happy hour, somebody lost their dog, somebody lost their watch.
Right.
And everybody's on it every day. I try to keep the politics out of it, and keep
Smart.
it as a happy promoting kind of place. But so I get a lot of exposure that way, and it's such a small area. You bump into your customers,
Sure.
your past clients. You go to a restaurant, and I'll see six different people who I've sold houses to. So
Now, can anybody join that Facebook group, or is it?
anybody can join.
Could you just give the name one more time, please?
Sure, just go on Facebook and just search for West Hampton Beach, and it'll come up the West Hampton Beach area community, the West Hampton Beach Area Community Forum, and request to join.
And I bet you can learn a lot about the area
Oh,
just
absolutely.
being part of that.
Yeah. It's when somebody's looking for a contractor, an electrician, or a plumber. It's a great place for people to get together.
So if someone needed to reach out to you that was looking to rent there or buy there, or there was a real estate agent that had someone they had to refer over to you,
Sure.
what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, with me, it's I'm Douglas Elliman Real Estate. We are the largest firm on the East End in the Hamptons. I'm Steve Rosmarin, as you.
What's your phone number? Are you comfortable giving out your cell phone?
Sure. My cell is 631-255-5555. 2213. Yeah, it's, or you just look for the West Hampton Beach Douglas Elliman office and you ask for Steve.
Everyone knows Steve.
And you get me. So,
Steve, is there anything else that we're missing about the Hamptons?
No, I think, it's a wonderful place to own or rent, but own a second home.
Yeah.
We're so close to the city and to northern Jersey and to Connecticut, and it allows you, for the person who can spend more time than a week on a vacation,
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to have something that you can go back and forth to, and the area is resorty enough to feel like you're in a resort,
Right.
but it's not so, Jersey Shore. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it's just, you go to Jersey Shore for, the party or the, whatever. I think that's what it's like. We're a little bit more refined than that. There's an elegance in the area that I think is unique. So
Thanks for taking the time to take away some of the mystery of the elegance in the Hamptons, Steve. Thank you so much for being here today.
my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for letting me share.
No, thank you. And again, if you need anything in the Hamptons, please reach out to Steve. Steve, phone number one more time, please.
631-255-2213.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone listening out there today. Again, this is Greg Wareham with Your Mortgage Process. Our guest today, Steve Rosmarin. Look forward to catching up with you next week. Bye, guys. Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Your Mortgage Process, hosted by Greg Wareham, produced by Greg Wareham and Nick Pavese at The Social Rift, and executively produced by The Social Rift. Thank you again for tuning in, and we look forward to catching up with you next week.